Russo's Books, in partnership with the One Book Project and Kern County Library, presents the Women Who Inspire Author Interview Series with none other than Brittney Morris, author of Slay. Recorded August 24th, 2020.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very first inaugural event for our for Kern County Library's One Book Project with our very first author. It's kind of like a preview event because it doesn't officially launch till September, but we were lucky enough to snag the one and only Brittney Morris now. So I'm very excited. I would like to ask you please to go ahead and make sure that your presentation is in speaker view rather than gallery view. That way you can get the best view of what's happening. And then of course, go ahead, you can keep your chat box open if you want to, and throw in some questions when you think of them. And if we have time, we will go to the chat box to pull up questions. But for now, hi, Brittney, how are you doing?
Hi, doing well, thank you.
Very nice. Would you be willing to describe your book to anyone watching who hasn't read it yet?
Absolutely. So Slay is a story about Kiera Johnson, who is 17 years old. She is a game developer who has created a VR world called Slay. And the story is about what happens when a player in the game is murdered in real life, and her game is then labeled a violent hub for thugs and criminals, and an anonymous troll pops up and threatens to sue her for anti-white discrimination, among other things. There's a whole bunch of drama, and she has to navigate that and eventually duel said troll for control of the game using duel cards based on Black culture and Black history. I was inspired to write the book after I saw Black Panther a few years ago. As soon as I left the theater, I wanted someone to create a Wakanda simulator video game, and I had no idea how to program one. And so I said, well, if I don't know how to make one, I'm going to write a story about someone who does. And thus, Kiera was born.
Who do you want to read it the most in a perfect world?
Oh boy, I'm just happy so many are reading it. It's an honor. It's a childhood dream. But I always get super excited when I hear that teens are reading it. People who are Kiera's age, people who are at a crossroads with who they are and figuring out, you know, what their identity means to them. And that can be anybody of any age. I think I was, how old would I've been? 25, 26 when I saw 26 when I saw Black Panther. And it changed my whole opinion about my own identity as a Black woman. So that constantly figuring out your own identity and what it means to you, anyone who's at that point, it means so much to me when they say they've seen themselves in the book.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's really kind of profound when you stop to think about, like, you think, oh, this is just my story, I want to say it, tell it, and then it affects so many people. So like a ripple effect, it goes out. So the Black Panther affected you, and then you are affecting who knows how many other people that will go on to, help out who knows how many more people beyond that. It's really kind of an awesome thing to think about. Yeah. So congratulations for being involved in that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Slay was selected as one of the young adult companion books to fit the theme of women and girls in tech for the One Book Project. Your character, Kiera, is very tech savvy, but she hides it because she doesn't think people in her life will understand. Do you think that's common for girls interested in tech?
I think that's common for a lot of people. I know it was common for me when I was younger. When I was a kid, there was, and I'm hoping this is kind of dwindling as the years roll by, but when I was a kid, there was a stigma around video games, and being a teenager who was into video games. At the time, it was either you were an academic who, was getting good grades and was going to make something of yourself, or you were at home playing video games in the summer and you weren't going to amount to anything. And so a lot of my video game fandom when I was a kid was kind of closeted, or it was kind of pushed away as oh, that's just a hobby, but I'm focused on my studies, I promised. And it's like, no, video games are an actual career. Tech is a career. Computer science is a career path that you can take. And I think it took forever for people to realize that. When I was growing up, at least, a video game, tech people were white and Asian men in Japan and, huge cities that I lived nowhere near. So I absolutely think so. And I feel like the landscape is changing. But I hope more and more as young girls are encouraged to go into STEM fields, that stigma will kind of like leave us permanently, because it's not helping anyone. And that young people will feel empowered to go into tech fields, including video games.
Awesome. Yeah, it even kind of applies, I think, a little bit to on the player end of things. Like being a gamer girl became like a bad tag for a while, and I didn't really understand why. It's like girls play video games too. Girls have been playing video games just as long as guys have. Maybe not as many, but that's changing too. So yeah.
Did you see
I'm
the
glad.
recent article that came out about that?
No, tell me about it.
There was a list of like a few dozen, I think, video games for women, and I don't know what audience they were trying to reach with this list, but they listed, totally relevant and fun games, like Sudoku and like a whole bunch of other like super calm games. It felt more like I was reading a list of like video games for people who get easily stressed out, not video games for women. And so the whole list was just kind of, it missed the mark entirely. And
oh no.
Yeah, they quickly got rid of it, the company that published it. But it was just, I'm glad people jumped on that very fast and went, yeah, that's not helping anyone.
No, yeah, that's a really good sign that people are like, take this down. This is not okay. I like that. I mean, yeah, I like that. That's the push. Now, I do want to kind of segue over for a second, because I saw that you are a writer for Subnautica Below Zero, which that was watching a playthrough of that was the main reason my family bought Subnautica and Subnautica Zero. We haven't gotten to Subnautica Below Zero yet, because we're still playing the first one, but that is an amazing and beautiful game with an amazing storyline, and it's really awesome. Did you get involved with that before, during, or after writing about Slay?
I actually got involved with that very recently. I put out a tweet just into the ether a few months ago and just said, hey, so I'm writing for video games, but I would love to do more if anyone's interested. And someone DM'd me and said, hey, I can refer you to this person who's working on this game. And they said, can I give her your email address? And I said, sure, go ahead. So I get this email from Unknown Worlds, and they're like, yeah, so we're working on this video game called Subnautica Below Zero. And I go, I have been training for the last 7 years, or 5 to 7 years for this game. I've seen like 4 different playthroughs of the original Subnautica. I'm a huge Jacksepticeye fan, so I've been watching him play it since like, I think late 2015 is when he started playing it. I was like, I'm in. If you'll have me, I'm in. And so I went through the interview process, and they liked what they saw, and I liked what I saw, and everything just kind of worked out. So I got really, really lucky, and I'm so excited to be able to work on Below Zero. They're an incredible group of people.
That is so cool. That's cool. Do you think you'll be involved with any more projects like that, or?
I would love to. Yeah, we'll see where the video game writing takes me.
Excellent. Do you hear that, interwebs? She's available and ready. She's yeah, get in on that. All right. In your book page interview by Olivia Ree from earlier in August, you were asked a really good question, I thought. It was, what advice would you give to readers who, like Kira, are struggling to balance their identity and societal expectations? I loved the answer you gave them, so I'm going to ask you the same question. What advice would you give to readers who, like Kira, are struggling to balance their identity and societal expectations?
I love that question too.
It's a good question.
I feel like they really did a great job. I feel like societal expectations often stem from stereotypes and people's preconceived notions of what you should be as a insert label here. And one of my favorite exercises that I do when I go speak at schools and whatnot is challenge the students that I'm talking to think of a label that they've given themselves or that society has put on them especially if they're the only one in their friend group who has that label. So I am the black one, I am the gay one, I am the adopted one, I am the fat one, I am the insert any label here, and then continue the sentence with, but I do or don't, or am or like or don't like this, and that's okay. So the example I always give is, I am a plus size woman who does yoga. And whenever I go to a new yoga studio, oftentimes I'm labeled the fat one. I mean, you know, they don't say that to my face, obviously, but I feel different when I walk into the space. I'm very aware of my size and everything. And I feel like when I walk into that space, people are expecting me to not be able to keep up. People are expecting me to have to modify a whole bunch of things and need extra assistance and be kind of lost and be new to yoga. And I've been doing it for 7 years now. So that's not me. And so that's the example I always give. But yeah, I feel like people should be absolutely empowered and encouraged to not meet people's expectations. If something is or is not part of your identity, absolutely throw away what people are expecting out of you about it. So if you are a black person who's never seen Coming to America, don't feel the need to go watch it just so you can feel like you're black enough. That was my entire childhood, and I wasted so much time trying to fit people's expectations about what a black girl should be. I tried to listen to the right music and eat the right foods and, you know, speak with the right accent, and it just none of it felt natural because it wasn't me. I grew up in Oregon. I grew up in a really conservative household. Like, just wasn't me. So I guess I would hope that once people read Slay, they would be encouraged to be whatever their identity is, regardless of what people expect of them.
Yeah, I felt like Kira through the first, you know, little more than half of the book was really struggling with that herself, trying to fit what she thought she was supposed to be, and her main conflict wasn't necessarily even with what happens later in the book, but with what happens with herself and trying to struggle with that. And I think that's a trap a lot of our young people fall in, is that I am supposed to be this, I'm supposed to have this figured out by age this, and I'm supposed to want to do these things, and I don't want to, but I'm going to because I'm supposed to. And I mean, eventually most of us get to the point where we realize, wait, this isn't me, but how much of our lives do we waste in the process? So yeah, I love that about your book and about your answer to that question, because I'm hoping that gets kids thinking and realizing they don't have to waste as much of their life realizing that just be you. It's all good. Just be yourself, whatever that is. It doesn't have to fit into any preconceived checklist or anything.
Absolutely. And that's kind of the whole message of Slay, is that specifically with Black people, the world of Blackness is so huge and multifaceted and kaleidoscopic that there is space for you in it. However your Blackness manifests itself, you are Black enough and you're welcome.
Are any of the characters in Slay inspired by real people?
Good question. So not directly, like I didn't start the book writing the different characters and say, okay, Harper is based on that girl in the second grade who talked to me this way. But I feel like each of the characters kind of go into a different facet of who I am and who I've had to be in the past. So Kira was kind of me as a teenager, kind of, you know, weighing the world's expectations on my shoulders at a crossroads about, am I Black enough? Who am I? Although Kira had gone natural with her hair at 17, and I wish I had gone natural earlier. Steph is kind of who I wish I could have been in high school. Like very, very empowering, very no nonsense, so sure of who she is as a Black girl, as a strong Black woman, and not willing to take any kind of nonsense, especially from hoteps. Harper, her shoes, I've actually had to step into as an ally in many spaces. She's kind of Kira's white friend on the outskirts, just kind of watching this whole situation unfold and going, okay, how best can I help? And why, when I tried to help before, was it not helping? And what am I doing wrong? And what can I do better? And how can I listen to you and advocate for you? When I was writing Jalen's chapter, I had to take a big step back and listen to the Black trans community and really ask myself what kind of representation they need to see on the page, in a way where I wouldn't be speaking for them, but alongside them. So that was an example of where I had to kind of step into Harper's shoes and take a step back and be the listener. Let me see, who else? Malcolm, I get twinges of, I guess, whenever, especially whenever Black death is trending in the news again, which lately seems like it's all the time. There's so much anger. Yeah, there's so much anger, and just, I personally go into just an entire ball of grief. When George Floyd's story came up, it almost broke me. I had to do back-to-back therapy sessions, and just it felt like I was being eaten alive. And I can easily see how that can turn into unbridled rage, in the case of Malcolm's character. So in that way, I can sympathize with him. His other behavior we can talk about. But yeah, each character, I guess, is a small piece of who I am or have been or can relate to in some way.
Awesome. Yeah, they all felt really real, and I could empathize and be like, what the heck, with all of them. So it was nice. It's a talent to have, and you've definitely got it with these characters. So that was cool.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to again go off on a little tangent and talk about Project Lit. Now, for anybody listening who doesn't know what Project Lit is, it's really cool. It's a grassroots reading initiative devoted to having high interest, diverse, and own voices books read widely throughout many communities. And in case you don't know what an own voices book is, it's people writing about, in their own voices, people like them. It's your own voice book. Makes sense once you break it down, but some people are like, what? And it's really cool, and it's been going for a couple years now. It was started by, I think it was a middle school teacher. I think he's a middle school teacher. Anyway, but it is all over the nation now, and it's a really cool thing. And this year, the 2021 list, a certain author that we're talking to right now, her book, Slay, this one, made it on to the Project Lit list. Now, were you familiar with the Project Lit before your book landed on the list?
I was, yeah. This is a huge honor. I'm very excited.
How did you find out?
My editor emailed me just out of the blue one day and was like, "Hey, congratulations!" Nice. It was very cool.
Nice. Now I'm going to dive a little deeper and more personal.
Okay.
The characters' avatars in the game of Slay have amazing skins. That's outfits for you not gamer people. And tags. That's names for you non gamer people. What would your skin look like in Slay, and what would your tag be?
Mermaid, definitely. Some kind of mermaid avatar. I think my storytelling actually started when I was like 4 or 5, just starting to draw and just barely starting to write. And I would come home and I would draw these characters and I would tell my parents these verbal stories about these mermaids. And it was always the same story about these 5 or 6 mermaids, and they always went on the same adventure over and over again. I don't know how they put up with it. But I've been obsessed with mermaids since I was a kid, and I would love to have a mermaid avatar. The name? I'm not sure. I really don't know.
I always get hung up on names because I'm like, oh, it could be this. No. Oh, it could be this. And I think up too many options and don't land on one because I worry it's not good enough for this character to come up with. Yeah. I'm going to put it out to anybody watching. What I'd like you to do is in the comments, I would like you to say what your skin would be and what your tag would be if you had this perfect game to go and play in. And then, of course, I also have to ask the ubiquitous book nerd question. What is your writing process like? How do you find inspiration?
Ooh, good question. So, my writing process is actually kind of strange, I think. Like I talk about it, and what was it? I was on a panel with Mary H.K. Choi at where were we? We were in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was talking on stage about my writing process, and she went pale. It was just like, why would you do that to yourself? Whenever I start a new book, I'm a fast drafter, just in general, because if I take too long to write a rough draft, I will overthink it and the plot will get away from me, and I will start wondering why I started this book in the first place and think it was a horrible idea and then chuck it in the trash, and that's that. So I have to get through it as fast as possible before I can start second guessing myself and let imposter syndrome take over. So that's the goal of my rough draft, is just to get through the book as fast as possible. So that said, whenever I come up with a book idea and I decide I'm going to start writing a book, I give myself 24 hours to plot and write an outline and a synopsis. That can be broken up over several days, but in certain hour chunks that add up to no more than 24 hours. Once I've got that one-page outline, then I can start fast drafting. And in that one page, I have a block of text that has one line for each scene or chapter. It's usually a scene is a chapter. The beginning part is what has to happen in the scene in order for that scene to stay in the story, so it makes it a critical scene. And then the end of it is the hook that keeps the reader turning to the next chapter. I cannot go over one line per chapter. That's the rule. If I do, it's too long, it's too wordy, there's too much in it, you've got to condense. And I use that outline and then make a word count goal for each one so that the book is the proper length that I want. And that formula kind of keeps me in boxes as I go, so I can't, deviate and go way off into space with the story. But it also gives me space within each chapter to kind of play around, make up character names, make up, subplots, things that happen along the way. So I have just enough freedom to get through with some color in the book and some space to play, but it keeps me on track enough to get everything written in about a month to 2 months. So that's my general writing strategy. And then I get inspiration usually from reading. So if I'm feeling like I am stagnating, I'm kind of writing the same thing over and over again, I'm not really inspired with whatever I'm writing, I'll usually read something completely off the wall in a totally different genre, something with incredible prose, incredible dialogue, incredible character development, something that gets me going, oh, I wish I could do that, or I can already do that, let me just go do that.
Awesome.
So.
I like your writing attack strategy. It's very organized, and I imagine it saves you endless days of revision later, having to hack all the weeds out.
Yes. Revision is the hardest thing for me. The author of A Song of Raids and Ruin, Rosie Brown, she is a master reviser, and drafting is not her strong suit. I'm the fast drafter, and revising just, oh god. So we tag team and talk each other through the hard parts. So it's kind of nice.
Excellent. That's cool. And what are your future projects? I understand there's a new book about to come out. Can you tell us all about it?
There is, and I can.
Yay!
So my new book is called The Cost of Knowing. It comes out in March, and it is about two Black teenage brothers. One can see into the future and one can see into the past. And the older brother sees a vision of his younger brother dying in the next few days. And so it becomes a race against time to figure out where this 400-year-old family curse came from and get rid of it before it's too late. This book talks about Black men and boys and their mental health. It talks about Black teenagers in an all-white suburb and how dangerous that can get. It was originally named The Curse of Knowledge after a cognitive bias that basically says it's difficult for an expert in a field to explain to a novice, or it can be difficult because of the level of expertise and the amount of, you have to just do it first to understand that there is, and explaining to someone who's new at it. And I applied that to being Black in America, because that's what it feels like when I try to explain to my white friends why getting pulled over is one of the most terrifying experiences that can happen to me. Even though I don't have so much as a parking ticket on my record, I don't know if they'll ever get it without stepping into my shoes. It talks about Black boy joy and exactly what we're asking of Black men when we ask them to be joyful and colorful and their most authentic selves, and the layers that come with that. And it's really, it's more of a Black boy joy despite book. So it's heavy, it may leave you in tears. It took a lot out of me, but I'm very, very excited about it, and I'm very excited to share it with everybody.
Sounds very cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Was it difficult writing it as a woman?
It absolutely was. Yeah. I had to, I made sure to walk a fine line, because on one half, I am talking about the Black American experience, which is my experience.
Mhm.
And on the other hand, I'm talking about specifically the Black cishet male experience, which is not my experience. And so the whole time I was writing this, my number one concern was make sure I'm speaking alongside Black men and not for Black men. And I think it's also the responsibility of people who have been welcomed into conversations, spaces where conversations about mental health have been, you know, acceptable and everything, to think of ways that we can include and encourage Black men to join into those conversations. Because I see so many times, especially on social media, like people are like, oh, you know, Black men who talk, or Black men who talk about their feelings are sexy, and, you know, men who are emotional are, you know, we stand men who are emotional, and all of that. And inviting Black men specifically into those conversations in a way that's intersectional and accessible is so important. And I feel like they've been left out of so many of those conversations, and it's so, so critical for them to be included. And so that's what the mission of this book was. I hope I nailed it. We'll see.
Excellent. Yeah, I feel that way too. Like that they very often are not invited in, and it's a already kind of a difficult subject for men to get into, or to allow themselves to get into, and then to add that extra really massive layer to it that, you know, some people won't even acknowledge, let alone let people talk about. Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, my librarian friends would kick my butt if I didn't ask you what your favorite titles were when you were younger.
Ooh, let me see. I was really into Gail Carson Levine. So I read Dave at Night. I think that was the first novel that I read, and I felt super special because it was a big kid book. It was like this thick, and I was like, and her book Ella Enchanted, Ella Enchanted was really like incredible for me to read as a kid, because it was the first time where, minor spoiler alert, the princess saves herself. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Like, I saw myself as the hero of my own fairy tale for the first time, which was incredible. And Dave at Night was a unique experience and really important, because it stars a white, I think he's 12 or 13, white boy, who sneaks out from an orphanage and goes to this jazz club every night. And the person of his affection is a Black girl. And that was the first time where I got to see myself as the princess figure. And it was just really validating and really cool to see myself as beautiful on the page. So those were two really, really important books to me. Let me see what else. Those are the two that come to mind that really, really had an effect on me and made me want to write. So
That's awesome. No, that's really cool. And I haven't read one of them, so I'm going to have to now.
oh.
Did you, perchance, love hanging out at your school or city library?
I did, yeah. This actually this is actually kind of a sad part of my life. But the house I grew up in was not the kindest. There was a lot of verbal abuse, emotional abuse. I was raised in an evangelical home, and so there was a lot of like just heavy-handed religious, religious oppression, I guess is the best way to, I can think to say that. So I didn't really have a lot of freedom. We weren't allowed to do a whole lot. We weren't really allowed to experience pop culture. Those 2 books I mentioned, I had to read them at my school library because I knew my parents would never let me read them because they weren't Christian enough. And so going to the library and hearing story time was one of the only times in my childhood where I got to hear a gentle adult voice that I felt safe around. And that was really, really big. I didn't realize how big it was at the time, but now looking back on it, I'm like, thank God I had those librarians and just the kind adults in my life, making me not lose hope. And yeah, so the library was always a really sweet spot for me as a kid. We would also check out music there that we couldn't listen to at home. So we would, rent movies, and we kind of find our own space in the library, and it was just an awesome experience. So yeah, the library was really important to me as a kid.
Awesome. You just made me tear up. I'm like, yeah, we did
Aww.
it. So I'm sorry for the difficulties of your childhood, but I'm glad you had a good library and a good librarian to help out.
Yeah. It astounds me how many people think the libraries are just for going and checking out books. It's like, no. For a lot of people, that's their internet access. That's where they can apply for jobs. That's where they keep connected to the community. That's where they can meet up safely with their friends after school. Like, the list goes, you already know I'm preaching to the choir, but the list goes on and on.
Yeah, no, it really, really does. And I'm going to kind of use that to segue and say that our Kern County Library people have been doing such a good job with so little for so long, including this one book project. They are packing so much into it and getting so many different people from the community involved in so many different ways. So I'm really excited about it, and I'm really excited that you agreed to participate, and you kind of get to be our preview kickoff for it all. So thank you very much. And I think your book is a really important one, and it was an excellent addition for them to put on for the companion book for the main book, because it's relevant not just in the sense of women in tech, but also every other aspect that touches, with people and trying to fit into pigeonholes and not fit into pigeonholes and be themselves, and then current events and things that we're all dealing with right now, and people whose voices do not get heard often enough. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah,
thank you for letting me grill you. I hope I was gentle enough. And
oh yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to plug or anything? Do a shout out?
Mental health in general, if you are struggling, as most of us are in this lockdown, and with back to school on the horizon, seek help if you need it. Reach out to your friends. Don't be afraid to get professional help. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's admirable. And we need more people reaching out for help when they need it. So end the stigma around mental health. Get what you need.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard it, but Mike Russo came around the corner and said, look at chat, ask a question. Oh wait, no, there is one. It just popped in there. I love this book, especially the descriptions of gameplay. Just curious, did you get any pushback for calling out hoteps, which I really appreciated?
Good question. I did not. Well, okay, I should say I don't know. I don't read my reviews that are less than 4 stars, so I'm sure I have. I have not seen them if I have. My agent is a Black woman who is starkly against hotepery. My editor is an Asian woman who is starkly against hotepery. My entire publishing team knew what I was talking about and was like, it's about time we started talking about hoteps in YA books. So I was lucky to be able to surround myself with people who understood where I was coming from and agreed with me throughout the publishing process. And if people are going to disagree with it, I encourage them to read more.
Thank you, commenter, for the question. Miss Carla. That was a
Thank you.
very good question. Yeah. All right. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you.
much. This was
Thank
so
you.
much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I had a great time. Thank you.